I just learned a new term, which is what I'm trying to explain to my mom. It's how I want to live my life. I'm like, have you heard of a dinkwad?
A dinkwad or
a dinkwad?
I know what a dink is.
A dink is the dual income, no kid. Mm-hmm. But a dinkwad is dual income, no kid, with a dog. When they look at an Asian woman, that's a submissive woman. Like, she's gonna do what you say is because that's the descent, right?
Yeah.
And that's such a powerful moment that you brought that up.
It's funny you say about the submissive, although that is I think how most Asians are viewed. And what's crazy is,
yeah, having date night is so healthy. Like, people feel like you have to spend a lot of money on date nights, but sometimes date night can come to just sitting on the couch and having like a really nice 2-3 hour conversation and like really connecting at the core. Hey everyone, welcome to the Fit and Frugal podcast. I am your host, Tawni Nguyen. You can find me on IG at Tawnisaurus. So today I have with me my girlfriend Kandy.
What's up, girl? Thanks for having me.
You know what's really funny that I wanted to ask you?
What's that?
This is the real estate cheerleader. Tell me more about that.
Yes. So my mom had me become a cheerleader in Batum League, like second grade, right? And it was one of those things, I think she just wanted me to have an activity, stay busy. But fast forward to high school, that was something I think I always enjoyed. I was actually a real realtor, a real cheerleader, in high school. And I blew out one of my knees, unfortunately, my junior year, and still loved the whole cheerleading altogether, that I wanted to be on the team and squad, and became actually the mascot. So I think it was always in my nature to be the bubbly, kind of outgoing gal. And now being in the real estate industry, I am a big advocate when it comes to loans, to whether you're buying your own home and investing. So I think, to me, I'm always cheering people on about real estate. So I think that's kind of where I coined that myself.
I think that's where our energy kind of resonates too, because I'm like, real estate cheerleader, I dig it. Like, it's not something I grew up on. There. So. But our energy is so different, because speaking of high school, like, I was the opposite of being a cheerleader in high school. I grew up like the stoner, emo, I grew up like with that goth phase.
Who did this to you?
Who did this to me? Who hurt you? Let me give you my therapist's number. It's gonna be a long day. Yeah. No, but that's why I felt it was really intriguing to ask, is because I never saw myself, like, I'm bubbly now. It's because, I work through some things too, but when I feel like that energy to where we kind of connect, and it's like, cheerleader, like, I never would have seen myself being friends with a cheerleader because of how I grew up is a little different. Like, I was always more of like the outcast, a little black sheep, very different, like not Asian enough to fit in with Asians, but like not white enough to hang out with the white kids, not smart enough to hang out with the nerds, but like nerdy enough to where people beat me up, so I was like that weird triangulation of identity. Being Asian too.
You hit the nail on the head. I think when it comes to high school, grade school, we all struggled with our identity. Like, who are we and who do we fit in with? I don't think we all knew at that time, but what's funny is, even though I was not always friends with the Asians or whatever you call it as in terms of demographics, I didn't feel like I fit in. I didn't go hang out with the cheerleader friends. They went to go drink and do bonfire things. And the Asians, I feel like they frown on me because I was just too whitewashed, is what they would call it. And they would make fun of me because when I was cheerleading, I was the one that they actually tossed in the basket toss. And I'm a pretty big Asian, like, I think. Yeah. And I think, that unfortunately kind of dampened on my light growing up. But I think as an adult now, I feel more confident in who I am and the energy I can provide to people. I think you and I are not that different. I think this little snippet of us learning about each other, we're a lot more similar. Yeah. Even though we grew up in different environments, it sounds like, but similar.
Where did you grow up?
I was born in New Orleans and raised south like about an hour south of New Orleans by the Gulf. And the population of the town is like 1,200. So the people I went to school with in kindergarten, I actually graduated with
Oh, wow.
my senior year. We had maybe like 55, 60 students max. So really small town mentality. I think when I moved out and went to college in New Orleans or Lafayette, I then moved to Dallas, right? After Katrina, lived there for about 10 years, moved to Denver, and this is now home. So that's kind of my path that I've had.
Yeah, I would have never picked you for a little small town, like Southern raised, like that Southern Belle kind of interpretation of like your accent or anything, just because we were talking about how we were raised. And, like I grew up as an immigrant, like a child of immigrant. I came here and I feel like our roles now in our social culture is like we kind of became how would you say, like we broke the stereotypical norm is because we don't live in the same place as our parents. We are in a completely different state. We are also childless, like we have our fur babies. And we are proud of that life that we have here in Vegas, right? Because it took me a little bit of weaving through to get here today. Like, how do you feel like being Asian affected you growing up and where you are now?
It's funny you say that because I think this is really where I'm able to share my voice to the world, right? Growing up in a small town, being Vietnamese descent, to your point, even though I was born and raised here, my parents fled their home country, our home country, Vietnam, to come here and basically raise a family of 7, not knowing the language and not having any money to their name. So as far as the idea behind being is this first generation for us or second generation? I never get that right. But I think growing up in that environment where my parents had to flee the war, they were always in that fight-flight mode that I think, unfortunately, I had adopted over the years just because that was the environment that we were raised in. The cultural barrier was very difficult. I think the language barrier, even to this point, is also, the language barrier was always was difficult because I love to connect with people. I think that's kind of one of my superpowers. And unfortunately, due to the lack of the language, the native tongue that we have, I just can't really connect with my parents. Like my Vietnamese is, I call it really grade school level. And so I think that's disheartening sometimes as we turn to our parents for guidance, for wisdom. And there's just, I don't know, I can't really connect with them, unfortunately, due to those barriers. So, but as far as what that meant to me, I don't think that really mattered as much as it does now. My line of work, my trade is I help people get financing for homes. And the company that I work for is actually Vietnamese owned. So being that they can speak the language and help guide, be the resource for my clients that are Vietnamese speaking, has helped me also grow that language, to be able to speak it in more, I guess, be more well-versed because, things that I'm working on right now is building the website. And then we had to have it in English and then also now in Vietnamese, right? So it was just these things that you didn't think you would ever need later on in life. You think Spanish makes most sense to have as a second language, maybe French, Chinese, but never Vietnamese. And I'm just glad, it's kind of working in our favor, my favor. So
I think being bilingual, like we took that for granted as a kid. Like I knew, like I was really fluent. I came here at 10 years old. Like I had to take ESL classes, which was super embarrassing because I went in, I think at 4th grade and I couldn't test into 4th grade because I was born like after the school year started. So when I had to, I don't know, like try to figure out where I am in like the American educational system is because I grew up differently in Vietnam because I was like in private school, like I was kind of nerdy, like that little only child prodigy mentality that I was raised.
Are you the only child?
I'm an only child.
Oh, wow. I didn't gather that.
Really?
There's a book about that, actually. Do you know? Like,
there's a lot of books about it. Be careful, we're coming.
Yeah.
No, but I think it shapes my worldview a little bit differently is because how you were saying how your parents left our home country, right? in a flight or flight kind of like survival mode coming here and leaving everything behind. It's because I witnessed that as a 10-year-old. And I came here like carrying my mom's trauma like with me, right? It's because we went through adversities even before I came here, and that became kind of like my emotional sponge and my responsibility as an only child. And that's kind of why when people connect with me, they're like, oh, you know, you're wise for your age. Like, this is what sages are. Like, you're an indigo child. Like, you're here. It's just a different light. I'm like, yeah, but like, there's a lot of things that people don't talk about surviving childhood trauma and actually taking on parenthood trauma is because of you have to reparent yourself to shape your light differently. It's because you it's like that invisible shield that nobody talks about. It's that like how we grew up Asian, but we are so stigmatized to like being the good girl and being the only child, or well, for me as an only child, but being the golden child, right? So there's different siblings levels, and for me, like that was a lot of pressure. And when I went through like my rebellious stage, you know, everyone kind of has like the phases that you go through. So I'm curious about like how other Asian descent women feel like within. How many siblings do you have?
I'm the youngest of 5.
Oh,
actually, yeah.
Okay.
So a little bit of what I hear from you, I feel your pain simply because I know my sister went through a lot of that. She being the oldest, I have 3 brothers in the middle, and then myself. I think the barometer that is set for the first child, only child, or whatever you call it, in a Vietnamese Asian household, there's a lot of regard that is, you know, you guys have to meet. There's big shoes to fill, if you would. But yeah, I think if anything, I am seeing things in a different light now. But to your point, I think growing up, there was always that stigma that, oh yeah, she's good in math, or like there's all these stereotypes, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It's unfortunate.
Play the musical instrument, you know,
the violin,
the piano.
Yeah, you grew up wealthy. We weren't around that kind of environment,
but wealthy, but very pressured. Like I was in aerobics. I did the whole gymnast route when I was younger. Yeah, it was like a really weird bits and pieces of memories that I have of my childhood. And when I came here, we couldn't afford it because we left everything. It's because there's a segment of like that childhood of when we came here, it was actually a green card marriage. And so we actually fled Virginia too. We came to Virginia. So it was like, what as hell is not like where we are now. So my mom was super culture shock, right? Like her leaving her own town. She's also an only child. She actually grew up more wealthy.
Is dad in the picture? Okay, so was you
divorced?
And mom? Y'all came.
They got divorced when I was like 3 or 4.
Okay.
So I am the epitome of every therapist's dream package, right? Growing up. So it was kind of funny is because that's why I brought that up, is that, you know, knowing that she left everything behind to come here so I can have a better future, I've always felt like a different kind of pressure. I'm like, am I supposed to still carry that with me? And, you know, like you always kind of grow up and like, oh, fuck, I'm a degenerate because I'm not at the level of the expectations of what we're supposed to be.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of weight carried with that, to your point of just pleasing or honoring our parents. And I think that's really what we strive for in a lot of these Asian households, is being able to make our parents proud. Now, will they ever say that or admit to it? No, but I think as they're getting older, or at least I can speak for myself. Yeah, I don't think my parents really know what I do, right? And I mean, they only know the mainstream titles of doctors, lawyers, statuses, and if you're not that, you're nothing. And that's tough. But I also have learned that maybe it's also what you played out in your head. That's the narrative you created, not you, just in general, because maybe that's what we heard growing up that they wanted from us. But I think more and more as they see you're happy and you're living life and you're not a troubled child or anything and living by God's ways and stuff, that they're just happy that you're there.
Yeah, it took a little bit of time, right, to turn things
40
around.
years later, and I'm finally, coming to terms or peace with that. So.
Yeah, and I think that takes a lot of healing, because I know you mentioned like how we're stuck on survival, most of that. So I feel like our parents kind of raised us on autopilot too. You know what I'm saying? Like that's what they knew, that's all they had, and like I worked through forgiving my parents or my mom, right, for my dad not being in my life. And all of the like fatherly roles that I had was a little bit different than what I assumed, like what a normal, what
you had to basically fill that role almost for your mom, to be kind of her partner per se, be the daughter, be the strength for the family. I mean, I'd imagine that's a lot.
Yeah. So when we were talking about that, I feel like the autopilot things, like I was raised with masculine energy, even though she's like a feminine woman. She's very passive. She's very obedient. She's very, what's that word? Submissive, right? Because that's the culture of how to raise women in, but her energy's always been so masculine. It's because she was the provider. It's because she had to play the dad role without the authoritative, figure and all of that power and control thing. So it was very like off balance in terms of how that disconnected us from connecting. Because you're saying like it's hard to connect to your parents because of the language barrier. I'm like, I speak fluently the language my mom speaks, but we have a disconnection in energetic alignment. It's because we can't even have conversations. It's because it leads to such like emotional turmoil to where it's an emotional maturity thing for me.
Sure.
She's a lot more soft and like, and for me, like, I feel like I'm too bold or assertive for her. But when we have conversations, she's like in tears because she can't handle the things that are coming out of my mouth. It's because I'm asserting like, hey, like things can be different. You can work on this. And boundaries are very offensive to her. It's because in Asian culture, there's no boundaries.
Yeah, they take that personal. Like, why don't you want to be around me? Why don't you want to be close? Well,
like, why did you move like across state line to get away from me? It's always about them, and everything becomes personal.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm always curious on how, since you're born here, like, I don't know if those values and those things that, like in typical Asian households kind of applies to you.
I think when it comes to that, I've gone against the grain on a lot of levels. I don't think I'm a good example. And I say that in regards to being the youngest of 5, I think has allowed me to get away with a lot of things, right? Whether it was being able to go to school where I wanted to, maybe move where I wanted to, date who I wanted to. I mean, there was things that they kind of put limitations on me as parents that I felt I didn't agree on. And there was times where I felt I was disobeying them and not a good daughter, but I also knew that that wasn't aligning with my true self and happiness and authenticity. And I know this may sound selfish, but I'm going to live a lot longer life than they will if all goes well, right? So you really have to be true to yourself and stay grounded with what you believe in. And I think over the years, whether it's me dyeing my hair a certain color and just being the girl that likes to go get spray tan and, my parents, they don't understand. They don't get it. But to me, I think that's what makes me happy. Like the whole not having kids, we struggled with that for many, many years. And they actually pushed me away. But now when we really spoke our truth to them and said, look, it's not for us. And they need to respect that, right? I know that they have children to allow so that we can take care of them in their golden years. And we're here to help do that. But having children is not going to make us happy. And it was hard to explain that to them because that's all they know.
Yeah.
But I think, as far as the upbringing, it was tough. But at the same time, I think as I moved away further and further, unfortunately, it does feel like I don't know, like I should be there for them. So I have a little bit of that guilt trip because that inner voice does still trigger you at times. You're like, wait, they are getting older. Shouldn't you be around? And I can relate to you, Tawni, about the whole mom-daughter relationship. It's tough. It is so tough. Just do they look at you with proud eyes, like this is my daughter. I have one picture I recently posted on social media with my mom, and her and I, we really don't take pictures together. And it was actually from a high school pageant. I'm not like this beauty queen or whatever, but it was just a high school pageant I was in, and I won the title for that. And not to boast, but it's like she was smiling in that picture. I felt like she was first time ever proud of me.
Yeah.
And it almost felt like conditional love. I mean, I hate to say it like that, but is this what it took, Mom, for you to be accepting of me?
Yeah.
And so, we've struggled over the years with that connection. And I think that's what I yearn for right now in my life, where we decided to move here in Lake Las Vegas. I'm surrounded by a lot of very powerful, I feel, women and wise women that they help me fill that void that I think my mom wanted to be, but couldn't.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I think that's where our pain, like we kind of resonate with that, is because it's always down to, I just learned a new term.
What's that?
Which is why I'm trying to explain to my mom, is how I want to live my life. I'm like, have you heard of a dinkwad?
A dinkwad or
a dinkwad?
I know what a dink is.
A dink is the dual income, no kid. But a dinkwad is dual income, no kid, with a dog.
I love it.
And I'm about to bring that term to my mom. Like, this is a perfectly happy and healthy, like, life that I live right now, currently. Like, you know, like I'm finally feeling like I'm my authentic self, and I just feel so connected to myself after all these years of like abandoning whatever image I thought I had to become, right? And all that rebellious stage and all of that stuff, just yearning for external validation. But I was chasing external achievements through most of my 20s, even though, yeah, I was fucking up a lot too. But I think when I tried turning my life around, I don't think I did it right. It's because I tried to mold myself into this socially acceptable role of like, I went back to college and doing all of these things, you know, and I got my grades together because I like barely made it out of high school. I was like a weird kid, you know, like I barely made it out of high school,
out.
Like, you know, like trying to figure stuff out, dropped out. And then when I went back to college, I call my 20s, I guess, like a Pyrrhic victory, is because all of the things I achieved, it cost me a lot more to get those achievements. It's like I let my mental health down, like my physical health was deteriorating, and my work-life balance was shit, is because like I was after like the hustle grind culture. I was working 2-3 jobs. I all I care about was like bank account, like how much money do I got, you know, and the people around me was very superficial. They were temporary, seasonal people that I didn't understand in my 20s, and I didn't make time for actual connection and like sitting down and doing something fulfilling. It's because I'm like, I have money, like I'm chill, right? But I never felt good enough. It never occurs
to you. I mean, it goes back to what we were talking about, the whole autopilot. You were just running and gunning. You were grinding, right? I can relate to that. And I think that's something I wanted to touch on, since this is about being fit and frugal. I think the whole fitness thing in my 20s, I was living in Dallas. And during that time period, I was solo. I went there after Katrina. I knew it was just a turning point in my life where I was ready to leave Louisiana. And I'm glad I did. Dallas was never really on the radar, but at the same time, it allowed me to go through all that BS that I think you're sharing. And whether that was relationships, maybe being introduced to Adderall for the first time, because girl, I was grinding. I had ATM machines, snowball machines. I was doing a event rental company. I was doing real estate, right? And so I think it goes back to all of that was keeping me busy, buzzing around. The Adderall helped me just work 16-hour days and just wreak havoc, right? Your body is just, it's in total shock. On top of what you've already carried over from, to your point, generational trauma, your own trauma, childhood, all of that, when does that finally stop? And you say, look, something's got to change, right? It's not about eating the cleanest, working out all the time, but all of that stuff takes years to unpack and rewire. And so what did it for you? I mean, it sounds like you went through that. Like, was it someone you met?
Like you had Adderall. I had mostly cocaine. I mean, I grew up on MDMA. Like it was the Molly life, the weed life. I started drinking at a really young age, which I didn't realize like those were all addictions, is because addiction.
You were around it?
Yeah,
it was just,
like I was around
seemed
it.
Like
it was
my
the
norm.
Yeah, like all my friends drank. It was normal, right? What did it for me? It's actually recently. I wanted to, it sounds really weird, but I began to feel like really out of place, like probably in my early 20s. And that's why I went back to college. I'm like, I got to turn my life around. But I still carried those addictions with me. It's because, I went to college. I got better grades. I did things a little differently. Like I was bartending. So that's where the root of drinking comes from. And the lifestyle I lived is just so normal. It's because all the businesses I was in, like I was doing events and all of these corporate events, weddings and all that stuff, it just allowed me to feel that addiction even more. And I think the minute I woke up from that is because I think when I moved here, I didn't know that I was actually running away from like myself. Cause I'm like, if I picked my shit up and just leave my hometown, I'll become a better person. But no, like I took all of that with me, except like it put me into this like existential, lonely, like hell, right? It took me to like emotional, financial, like rock bottom to where I'm spiritually broken. And I'm just sitting in like my vessel.
But that was you
like,
going through your transformation as well, that
like,
you didn't realize.
Yeah. And physically, I was like breaking down because I didn't take care of my health. I carried like 10 years of just drinking and drugs and like stress and like burnout with me. And I didn't realize that until I think the universe like forced me to slow down. It's like, this is when you're going to slow down, sit with your thoughts. And I couldn't be alone. And that was the codependent thing that I was talking about. I didn't realize how much I was dependent on other people, and like I was getting my motivation through people pleasing. And once I had no one around me, I was forced to like sit down
with yourself,
with myself,
your voices,
like
your
who am I, and listening to that like inner calling to where I'm like, who am I? And then I start asking myself like, who am I without money? Who am I without this? You know what I'm saying? Like, who am I without the status? Now that I'm no longer achieving these things, am I still worthy? And the answer was no. It's because I was at like a completely loss of self-worth. So when you sit with yourself at rock bottom, like you kind of knew like this is it, right? Like if you're losing your own battle with like depression, anxiety, you know, addiction and all of that stuff, and all you have is just you at the core, I'm like, this can't be me. Like this can't be how I continued living my life. And it seemed fine, right? Like we still had like, I call them like healthy income and all of that stuff. But the body I was experiencing it's so unhealthy. All of these like toxic things. It's me, you know, like I didn't have healthy relationships, and I blame nobody for that. It's because I chose to be the denominator in those relationships, in those friendships where people were taking advantage of me, you know? So it doesn't really have to be like about what I chose. It's what I allowed. Like all the disrespect I felt, all the resentment, it's because I chose to be there and I chose to feed into that. So to answer your question, like, yeah, like it took that much to where you don't realize you're sitting at your lowest low and like all of that loss, right? To realize like, wow, I need to change my life. So I start auditing like one aspect at a time. And it comes down to fitness. It's not just physical. It's like mental, emotional, spiritual, financial, and social wealth. It's just everything that encompasses you and your well-being as a whole. Like all of those aspects was broken. So that was the moment I had. It was like, wow, like I got to do something. Just pick one piece at a time, you know?
Well, I'm glad the universe had your back and nudged you when you needed it most, right? That's really incredible. I think, you know, the whole thing with going through it, feeling the pain, processing it, because that's over the years, the therapy and everything that I have experienced, they talk about that. You go through grade school, you go through high school, college, relationships, work, family. And then when life like kind of finally hits you, that's when you're like, all right, hold up. You've been asleep the whole time, call it what it is. Like, I believe I study a lot of energy, and that's been something that I've been fascinated about the last few years, just because aside from, I hate to call it like a skin suit, but how we look on the outside or whatever. Yeah, our vessel.
Yeah.
We're energy, man. We're like 99% energy. Like we're just we're beaming around, and this is just our facade. And as much as we are not cognitive of that and what's happening else behind your subconscious, like I think to me, it's really recognizing that. And when you finally do, that's when that work happens. And it's really incredible. And who you surround yourself, who you choose to be around, the energy that you want to thrive and learn from and expand with, that's exciting. And so all things said, I mean, I think one of the things I wanted to bring up on today's show that was the biggest life change for me going through all of this is the recent experience I had on being able to connect to your soul. Like that, it was like a journey into your soul, which was very sacred. some of the listeners out there may or may not have heard about this, but you know of it as like bufo alvarius, aka toad venom. I had a recent spiritual awakening having that administered, and let me tell you, it just really opened up so many new dimensions. Like, let's just call it the portal. Like, I'm getting really just straight into the spirit portal right now.
Let's get into the spirit realm.
And let me tell you, that has just really like lifted a veil, and all these things that we talk about, the limiting beliefs, things that we thought should be and could be or whatever. Like, wait, why not? What's holding me back? No one. It's you.
It's you.
It's you.
Like, you block your own blessings.
You block it. It's all the blockage. Like, okay, and how do you unblock it, right? And it goes back to just gut health is the primary. That was what started this whole health journey for me. The blood work, learning about your insides to be able to better optimize on your outside, and supplements to take, things that we're deficient on. All these years that your organs have been compromised due to over drinking, drugs, whatever, abuse, poor diet. If you're not fixing those things mechanically, internally, how do you truly show up for anyone at your optimal? You know what I mean?
Exactly. You're pouring from like the last 10% that you
depleted on fumes or what have you. Your cup is truly empty. And so as all of that sounds so cliche, I think it's really been something that I've been diving in more lately. And I think that's what excites me. To me, I think that's what fitness is. It's not about going work out and taking all these classes, but the journaling, the shadow work, the self-assessment, things that, you know, you have to really see, all right, why am I reacting this way? How do I fix it? This is all I knew, but is this how you want it to be? You don't want to be like your parents in that regard, not to discount all they've done for us. But you learn that they reacted that way because that's all they knew. They were not in an environment that allowed them to have access to the resources that we do now. And to forgive them and be empathize for them, to say they really did the best they could. And now it's on us. Right? Now
we know better. We're equipped with so much more, but at the end of the day, it also takes like a certain mindset too. It's because we're so much more open-minded to things that weren't well received before, which is a lot of conditioning, because we were damaging our body without realizing it. Because look at where we grew up. I grew up in Vietnam, right? And the food we eat is so different than moving here.
Oh yeah, I'm sure it's like farm to table, organic.
Yeah, like we grew up life, like farm life, right? I didn't really eat a lot of meat because my family my grandpa was Buddhist. So we grew up very Zen, holistic. We don't believe in medication and all of that stuff. He passed because of diabetes at a young age. So my mom took that to heart. So when we moved here, the first meal I had after leaving the freaking airport was McDonald's. Like, they were like, oh, you must be hungry. They took me to McDonald's and I was confused as hell. I was like,
how was your first experience?
I was like, what the hell is a Big Mac? They're like, we got to get you a Big Mac. I'm like, a what? They're like, oh, a hamburger. Have you had a hamburger? I'm like, I've had one in Vietnam. Like, at those nicer gourmet restaurants. But it's with real meat. And when I ate McDonald's here, I was like, what is this?
What's this cardboard?
Like, what is this? And then I told you, we kind of grew up poor. So I grew up like trying to eat microwave dinners because fast, right? My mom didn't have time. So it kind of brings back to that, like, do I blame them for that? No. Like, I appreciated everything. But I think part of rebellion is educating yourself and knowing better, is because once I started learning about our economic system, our agricultural system, I'm like, holy shit, like, I've been poisoning my body all of these years because I didn't know better. I didn't have, you know, the money or whatever. But it's not really about the money. It's still about the choices, because I still see a lot of really wealthy or affluent people making terrible decisions. Even they know it's better. They still kind of talk down to like, oh, organic is the new mainstream thing. I'm like, eating organic is actually not going to make you lose weight. You're just eating less pesticides and environmental damage to your cells on a cellular level.
It's not mass produced and chemically injected on so many levels.
It's not sprayed with like all these things that you're ingesting and all of these like household products that you're putting onto your body. So it kind of comes down to being conscious about the lifestyle that you choose, not only to work out, like you should work out every day, like you should get your endorphins in, like you should do the things that make you feel good.
Get your heart going.
But it's not going to solve your problem.
Right.
It becomes internal. And I like that you brought up shadow work. There's a lot of other work that people overlook. It's like inner child work, reparenting, and like how we look at ourselves and how we mirror the partners that we choose and put ourselves in relationships with. That's the level of respect you have for you. And it kind of comes down to this mind-blowing experience to where I started doing that in the last couple of years. And I look at any period of my life and I'm like, okay, this period I was this, why? I look at the people around me. We enabled each other, right? Because I can't blame them for my people-pleasing patterns, is because I want everyone around me to be happy. I'm in hospitality. Like, I love hosting. I love people. I love connecting with people. But I didn't realize it comes with the negative downfall of, being a people pleaser. Like being a doormat is because you're always trying to make sure other people are comfortable. But at the same time, you kind of self-abandon. And because if you speak up, it's against the norm, right? You said you kind of grew up like against the grain. That's how it is. We're just never taught to be assertive and kind of speak up for our needs and boundaries. And we just became this thing that people automatically assume when they look at an Asian woman, that's a submissive woman. Like, she's going to do what you say is because that's the descent, right?
Yeah.
And that's such a powerful moment that you brought that up.
It's funny you say about the submissive, although that is I think how most Asians are viewed. And what's crazy is, my husband he's white, but never did he ever expect for me to have dinner always ready. But that was on me. Growing up, my mom was a servant to my dad and us for the most part, right? And so to me, I felt that was automatically what I need to do. But mom was also a stay-at-home mom. She was a full-time mom. Not like what we are today. We're working women with
dog moms.
Yeah.
We're dinkwads.
Sorry. Freaking dinkwads. Yeah, it's funny. Over years, I had a hard time with my husband even because I thought I always had to have dinner ready by the time he's home. And we're stressing like, oh, you're not home yet and the food is cold. He's like, he wasn't expecting it from me, and it caused not tension, I wouldn't say, but misunderstanding that over the years, it was like, he's a well-sufficient guy. He's not waiting.
He can make his own dinner.
Yes. And although it was just how I was brought up that I need to cater to my husband, which I think I do a very good job at, but it's also not no pressure from him that helped alleviate a lot of this, over the years of misunderstanding or what you thought was the belief system of how a marriage would be successful, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, right? Like now that you kind of see it, you're like, why did I behave like that? It's because you set the expectation to yourself when it's not even communicated between you guys that's what he expects. Yeah. And I feel like having healthy communication is one thing, but like building and co-creating a healthy relationship is another thing. It's because you can have healthy communication all you want, but if you guys don't have that shared mission, shared values, and shared goals for what your future looks like, with or without kids, then you're just kind of doing this circular, again, putting each other in autopilot to just survive the marriage itself. And you're not really building that marriage to its full potential of what you want it to look like, right? Because that's a lot of people have that wrong.
Yeah, I agree. No, that communication, I think that C is so critical. Without it, I mean, I don't know, we would not be where we are communicating. I mean, we're always working on it. If we're communicating enough. Right? We both work busy lives. And sometimes, even though we both work from home too, people would think, don't you guys always talking to each other? But we're not. We have our own schedule. We have our own agendas. And very rarely are we in public together. We do date nights and we try to network together. But I would not be here too without him. He's definitely been a blessing. Like I know God has brought him into my life for many reasons, and I'm very thankful that he's helped me get to where I'm at today. And I wouldn't be here without him. So yeah, I think that's really rad.
Yeah, having date night, it's so healthy. Like people feel like you have to spend a lot of money on date nights, but sometimes date night can come to just sitting on the couch and having like a really nice 2-3 hour conversation and like really connecting at the core and kind of reset all of that external needs that we have in the material world. And that's where the soul connection kind of comes in. It's like, yeah, you can sit there and talk about finances and how you want to lead your life. And like, are we spending enough money here? Are we investing enough? Are we overspending here?
But also, Tawni, I mean, how many relationships are actually doing that, to your point, right? Are they looking at it? I mean, to me, I joke about it, but marriage is a business. It's a business.
I've been saying all of these years, and people are like, you're so unromantic.
How's your credit?
Business contract.
How's your business? Like, you got to choose your partners wisely, none different than if you were to start your own business. But while we have those meetings to build our financial wealth and things like that, I think it's important to just do little things. It's not even about date night, stepping out of the house, but having a morning coffee session together, doing a walk in the afternoon, or a little break in between to bring the dogs out for a walk. I think those things are those little nuggets that I know I'm so thankful to have that opportunity where I don't have to report to an office and limited from, hey, you know what, let's go grab lunch. Not that we do that often, but those are the moments that a lot of relationships, sometimes it goes back to autopilot. You got to differentiate that and be aware of who you are, your identity. Don't lose yourself along the way, because that can easily happen. So having a strong partner to help support you, not only mentally, spiritually, physically, push you, I think it's really what makes a marriage successful.
Yeah, because I like that you brought up like that you're building wealth together. So it doesn't really come down to having a lot of money, because a lot of people think, you know, as a power couple, the more money you make, the more things you can do. But
it's how you're strategic with it. And being a DINK, I think it's, hey, how do we capitalize on it? In fact, when we had the business expo this past week at Lake Las Vegas Sports Club, I had a couple, they live in our neighborhood. They just sold their house and they bought another new build down the street. And I learned that they are double income, no kids. They bought a property. Nonetheless, they're building their portfolio, and I love to hear that. Like, yes, you travel, yes, you eat good, but there's nothing that feels better than making money, I think, personally. Like that feeds things, those like luxury things, or even just lifestyle that you want, whether it's you travel, you got to lodge your kids if they're not traveling with you. And in kids in this regard is our fur babies, right? I mean, things cost money, you know? And so to me, if you can be a power couple together and generate you know, an abundance of money, I think that it's not about more money, more problems, but that's great if that's an autopilot. Let's get that in autopilot, if anything, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I think everything else is gravy. If you already have that established, strong relationship foundation laid out, it only gets better.
Because you got to build with the same mindset too. It's like, what is it that we're actually after? Because my values always is freedom. And
being financially free.
Yeah, right? Financial freedom and time freedom is because I want to be able to wake up when I want, even though I still wake up at the same time every day. But you know, when you work for yourself, like 5:30, okay. You know, I like it early.
You didn't roll out just now.
I didn't roll out just now. Come here, but it's still my conscious choice. Like, yes, I can probably sleep till 9, but my body doesn't allow that. It's because I put myself in a circadian rhythm.
Yeah, 9 o'clock here, girl. That's like 11 in Central Time. I mean, East Coast. It's like people are done for the day. Like, to me, 9 o'clock is late.
Exactly.
So I love to hear that you start early.
Yeah, I start early. So by like, let's just say 11, if I get most of my bulk of my output done, I'm like, wow, I'm really productive today. Yeah. And I love that you can like be able to take walks when you want. It's because it's those little moments of grace that you offer each other's like humanness. It's just like, hey, let's just go connect as humans without going to spend $500. Yeah.
Right?
Like we can go spend $500 on a meal.
You got legs. No, the weather is beautiful. Your kids want you to take them out. Yes. It recharges you. You get your vitamin D. There's so many benefits that a lot of people forget to just go for a walk.
Yeah.
It helps just clear the air literally and give you a new burst of energy. And so I encourage all the listeners out there, anyone working from home or at the desk, just step away. Say I'm going to take a smoke break, even if you don't smoke, you know, it's important.
Yeah, I think fresh air is underrated. And I think another thing is just sitting with yourself. Like I wake up every day and I try to remind myself, like even if I'm having like an energetically like bad morning, Because I'm always like, what's going to turn around? Like, you know, if I'm having a bad night, let's just say if something's still bothering me, I try to wake up and like shift my mindset. What am I grateful for today? Because you can't really be mad if you're grateful. You can't do both.
Well,
you know,
the whole thing about energy and the universe is there's only two vibrations that are sent out. You're either positive or negative, right? And whatever you are saying, what book was that from that I had read? 3 words to avoid, because the universe doesn't identify it, whether it's positive, like know exactly what it is you're saying, but the don't, do not, and I think no are the 3 words to try to avoid, right? What? Because when you say that, you're giving the universe like vibrations of signals that, you know, it could be a negative connotation for them and they're going to give you negative results or negative, you know, outcomes. Yeah. So, but it's just being more conscious and aware of that. Like, are you saying that as you start your day versus your affirmations in the morning of things that you're grateful, thankful, and blessed with? Yeah.
I think that's funny is because I felt like last year when I was trying to rewire that part of my brain, right? Like just trying to understand myself on a core level. I gave myself the opportunities and like I am blessed, right? To be able to say yes to so many opportunities, to know that it's not for me. It's because all of these times my addictions, just because I was just simply out of alignment with myself. And it took a lot of time for me to unbecome all those things. Is I think the defining moment comes down to like, I don't know what I want to become yet, but I know like who I don't want to be ever again.
Yeah, it's identifying it, archiving it, putting in the trash bin and whatnot, and clearing space to allow room for what it is that you do want to welcome, and that you do want to start becoming. So no, I agree. Nothing happens overnight. That unwiring is a real B. Like that's the hardest. Yeah. And there's days where the devil is going to try to test you. You know, he tries to like, oh yeah, she's weak right now. I'm going to get her. I'm going to keep her down. And that's when you got to brush it off and change your energy, change your vibe, change your activity. So we all struggle. I mean, actually the podcast that I listened to right before I got here, it touches on that. Like we got to, it's just putting in that work and being aware.
Yeah, so. That work is way more than just shouting affirmations. You know what I'm saying? It's actually what healing looks like. It's a lot of crying. It's a lot of like ugly crying, being with yourself, stop lying to yourself, and sitting with your darkness. Is that I feel like that compassion, that gentleness, and that kindness that really generous people have is because they're able to sit with themselves through their own darkness, and they're able to give that back. Right, they're able to multiply all of that darkness back into light is because they've been there. And I feel like we reflect that, because you say energy work, it's real, but doing the deep work, it's a lot. I don't know like how to package it, but before, like when I went on my spiritual, you know, trying to do a bunch of things, you know, it's like, yes, buy crystals if you believe in them, but it's more than just crystals, sounds bath, and I did the tank, the sensory deprivation. Like I've done a lot of stuff. Like what is that thing called?
EDMR, or what are we talking?
Like the brain waves. Like I do Reiki. What's the tent thing called?
The angel
sweat lodge.
Okay.
Yeah, like I've done sweat lodge. Like I've hung out with shamans. Like I wanted to do all of these like ritualistic things to where I felt like it would fix me. But at the end of the day, like what you mentioned is just sitting with you at your core. Like you can slap a Band-Aid on it all you want. Mine was projecting through emotional eating, emotional spending mostly, is because those are the things I can control. It comes down to money, but money isn't really bad. Is when you mentioned like don't say no. I felt like my life became more abundant when I said no to more things that I was always yes to, because yes to opportunities, but I was doing for the wrong reason, because I was attracting the energy that just wanted to take from me instead of pour back into me. It's because I reflected on the people that I was saying yes to. I still at the core wanted to please them, you know, but now that I'm capable of saying no, I became, I think, a more divine and a more intentional person to the things that I actually say yes to by saying no to more things. And I'm like, well, I am more powerful now. It's because I have the ability to choose out of intention rather than a people-pleasing place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, and don't hold me to it, but that book, I'll have to reference it. I think the whole no thing is a mental no versus like, hey, no, I can't, you know what I mean? Like to your point, you're making wiser decisions of how you want to invest your time or how you want to give your energy away. And it goes back to just those life clues too, Tawni. Like, do you know, we've talked about this. What's your path number?
Oh, life path number, I am a 5.
A 5. You're a free spirit. Do you know a lot about that? And
I know enough.
Yeah.
Always chasing freedom, curious at the core. Always, I can't do structure. I don't like being controlled. We should probably Google it.
No, listen, I took a moment yesterday and it was really bothersome, but at the same time, good. I mean, so I'm a life path 8. So just so you know, I was reading up some of the pros and the cons because I think, yes, you're a Cancer. Yes, you're I'm
a Scorp.
A Scorpio. Where's some,
you're Cancer?
Yeah.
When's your birthday?
June 27th.
Okay, no wonder it's that water sign connection.
It's that. We're two kind of like crabs, right? Like a little bit, little claws coming out.
We're the crybabies.
But so check it. I think, maybe some of your listeners can help me with this because as we learn more about ourselves, it goes back to energy. It goes back to how we were created, the time where we were located. I believe in that science. And in fact, in school, the two of my favorite topics were psychology and astronomy. Those were my 2 favorite subjects that I think I wanted to learn more about and I never dived in, sadly, because again, I just wanted to get a degree and hurry up and start making money. But more and more that has been presenting itself in this regard. And so when I hear these life clues, it's like, all right, now you know this about yourself. How do you condition yourself a certain way to excel even more? And this is why I say that. So is there a therapist that can train me to be a certain way because you know who you want to be and how you want to be? And so it's not really truly therapy. Is that a life coach? Like, are they going to tell you like, is it?
Yeah.
Because look, so some of the positive is, number 8 is you want wealth, power, and material comforts. Right? Okay. You have an enormous ambition and dream of big projects, great undertakings, and rewards. So we're coined as a professional. We are usually like real estate people, CEOs, owners, things like that. But here are the negative traits that I'm going to put it out there, whatever, you know? You're a workaholic, overly ambitious, lacking humanitarian instincts, which I feel I want to start tapping into more. So it's like if you know you lack it, look, mismanaging money, even though we're good with about numbers, repressing subordinates, and then impatient with people and stressed and materialistic. Like that sounds kind of bad, but is it? Like I know I love a good life, right? And what does that mean? That differs among everyone. Am I going out and grabbing Starbucks every day, paying $6? No, I'm frugal in that regard where we have a machine at home. We get our illy beans. I know my coffee creamer. We save a ton. Am I going out living lavishly, buying brand name things? No, I don't believe in that. I think I love to invest my money in real estate and things that pay back. But it's like the things that maybe if you're a workaholic, like how do you control that? Like, that's not a good look, I feel. And when I say that is, how are you truly balancing your life if you're always working? I mean, these things that whether it is 100% true or accurate, I can definitely agree that that's pretty damn on point.
I think workaholic depends on how you look at it too, is because you have to it comes down to like understanding your why. Like, why are you working so hard? Because if you're working just to work, you're just burnt out because one, kind of like me, like I was a workaholic in my 20s, I wanted money. Right. And that social status comes with having money, even though I didn't really show it, but like I had more, like I was comfortable. And that comfort led me to make really bad decisions, is mismanaging my money and feeding my addictions, right? It just allowed me to live my bad lifestyles at a higher scale with inflated lifestyle and just doing all of these things that just didn't really fit who I am at the core, because I didn't really understand investments until recently, right? And now that's why I think the resonation comes to the recent days to where we met is like, I think a lot of those traits can be deemed as bad, but workaholism, I think if you're building towards something, you have the rights to be a workaholic. It's because you want to create something for yourself and for your, your partner that's totally fine. But I think at the end of the day, like when you said lack of humanitarian, like I
and
love
you know what? I'm married
philanthropy.
to a number 9, which is humanitarian. Like there's
a balance, because I'm like, I do a lot of like philanthropic work because I love that fulfillment. I love.
Are you kidding me? My husband calls me Candace the philanthropist because I'm always trying to like throw like free pro bono events. Like, hey, can you sponsor the liquor? Can you do, I'm always trying to bring groups together and doing it pro bono.
Yeah.
Like to me, maybe that's not necessarily humanitarian, but that's bringing communities together, sharing them connects and networking.
Now take that to a higher level, to where when we reach a certain level of wealth, like we can actually give back. Because I still believe at the core, the two things like that's super easy, but that's really overlooked, is just be generous and be kind. But most people think generous always comes down to money. Like, sure, money is a valuable resource, but so is time. It's because if you truly care about something, like put time into it. Because there's a lot of people that I've worked with nonprofits and charitable events in the past. They just do it for the PR. They do it because they can post it on Facebook. It's more for a social status. But for me, I don't think it comes from a place of judgment, but I've kind of asked them, I'm like, hey, would you still do this if you can't post about it? Because they're like, how do you separate greed and actually doing it from altruism, right? Like, because you really can't. Because social media kind of makes everyone looks good or bad in the same way on how it's portrayed. And I just think it comes down to, like, would you still do it if no one knows you're doing it? Yeah. Because that's the core of who you are. Are you still willing to give $1 million if no one knows it's from you? And those are the kind of people that I really value, is because they never want themselves to be known.
Yeah, that's exactly what a humanitarian is, right? Like they'll do it out of the good of their own heart, but they're not here to get praise or recognition or need to even have credit for it. And I adore that about my husband. I think it goes back to, you had mentioned something about giving back when you are a certain, wealth status. I think that's where we tend to lose our way, that it doesn't necessarily mean you have to make a certain amount of money or have in your bank account. And I say this why I talked to my dad this weekend, and now that he's retired, he's been able to contribute back to the church, whatever that is, just handiwork around the campus or giving back, doing, some of their events and just being an extra hand. And I love to hear that he's able to do that, but he's also doing that because they don't really know what else to do. Like, yes and no, and not to discredit him giving back. I think they're retired. They never plan to be retired. They always plan to work until they die. Unfortunately, that's the generation they came from. But that's where I want to be able to change that. The community that my husband and I decided to move to they are elderly, they are senior citizens. And to me, I think we chose to live out there is because it is more calm. It is more, I think, less noise away from the strip. And there's a community out there. It goes back to, in the past, a lot of the work I've done was transactions. Whereas now I'm actually taking a moment and connecting, building relationships, having relationships that, you heard the cities I've been moving in, the markets that I've been living in. I've never had a sense of community or neighborhood. And not to, hopefully, it doesn't offend anyone that I've befriended along the way. I just didn't feel like I belonged. And for the first time, I finally feel that here in Las Vegas. The energy, the moon hits you differently. It charges you differently. I think the vibes, the hustle. And so to me, it excites me to want to give back. And whether it's things like financial literacy, helping women that feel they can't go out and buy their own home. And I'm not some me movement or woman activist, but I think it starts there. I think there's something like being tugged and called to in that room that, to your point, this is my trade, but what can I do to give back to the community? And, that's philanthropy. That's humanitarian to me. You know what I mean? And to your point, if that's work, then if that's what you consider work, then, heck, let's go. Yeah. God put us here. Yeah. He gave us an assignment. And we have to be sure we're doing the dang thing that he gave, he sent us down here to do.
Exactly. It doesn't even have to be about the money, because people always feel like, donations for the rich. I'm like, it's really not, because I've seen a lot of really generous people give, wholeheartedly, and they don't even make like 50,000, but, and that's just the kind of median income that kind of reflects a lot of values to where people separate themselves, right? Because that whole income disparity is so high now, or it's so large, like the margin in between what's considered affluent and what's considered low income. There's just such a big gap to where if we kind of close that, it comes down to human connection. It's because I've seen people give at every single level.
Yeah.
But what is it really doing? If it doesn't really fulfill you, if it doesn't really start that fire, like I love that we're really passionate about certain projects. Like I love animals. I love like women's, like there's a lot of human trafficking here. We're in Las Vegas, but where we live, it's quiet. Like we don't like that noise. We don't like the distraction. But how do you build a community around that? Because I grew up in Orange County like most of my life by default, right? Because of that guilt of never being able to move away from home because I am the only child. But a couple of years ago when I'm like, I finally had enough. I'm like, I need change. I can feel like I can do better somewhere else.
Good for you.
Not for my hometown and not for like an egoistic, perception, but
for yourself.
I just needed that growth that was stagnant, right? Like
forcing yourself to go to a new city, basically not knowing anyone. I mean, I'd imagine, I don't know, did you have any, like, why Vegas?
It's close enough to my mom, but it's far enough to where she can't just be like showing up. And I just felt like a connection to it. I mean, Henderson's a little different than Vegas, but I feel like the city, it's barely at an infancy to where there's a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of things that can be developed over time. And then not necessarily in the real estate market, but there's just so much value here. There's so much more things that could be built here.
Oh, for sure. A lot of growth to be had.
Yeah.
I mean, I asked you like, why Vegas? I know all the reasons why. Like, I'm unfortunately wish that I would have, and not unfortunate, and I say that because everything happens at the time it happens for a reason. I mean, we have friends that live here in Henderson that have been swaying for us to move out here forever. And the thought of like, it's it's a desert, it's hot, but this place is a hidden gem.
Yeah.
And listen, like as much as I feel, it's not about being hush hush about it. Like I want to move my family here. I want them to see life outside of the strip. It provides a very comfortable lifestyle at a comfortable price point. So to me, I have nothing but good things to say about.
Exactly. There's so many things to do here. There's mountains. Like we live by the lake. We actually don't really go to the strip. I don't know if you go. Like I still go to the strip just to meet people if they really want to.
Shows.
There's options for entertainment, but there's just so many other things out here to do that people are kind of like closed-minded about, right?
Right.
Yeah.
No, we moved here with the intent that it mirrored a lot of Denver's lifestyle in terms of the outdoors. You can access the mountains if you want to go snowboarding. There's the golf courses here are abundant, but looking outside of just Vegas, because the valley can get small over time, you got the Pacific Northwest, you got California, you got Arizona. There's everything within either a few hour drive or a hop skip on the plane. And I think that's what we are most excited about too, having access to all of that. But, the list goes on. I mean, the no tax, there's international airport, getting in and out anywhere you want. Entertainment. I mean, look, the list goes on. Yeah. And so being a dinkwad, this is where you want to be, bro. Just saying.
Dinkwad.
I'm here to tell you. Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is a perfect city for dinkwads, actually.
Yeah. No, I mean, listen.
Why? Because the education system, I heard, is not that great.
Oh, well, that's just what I'm saying. It doesn't apply to us.
Well,
how are the dog lodges, though, is what we need to be worried about. You know what I mean? How are the dog hotels?
Pet-friendly pet hotels where humans can go, too. Like little coffee shops that where the dogs hang out with other dogs, but humans can come too.
That's what's up.
Like dogs need more food. Dogs need, like anything. How if you go to Lazy Dog, there's 2 options for dogs. I'm like, why don't we just make a restaurant to where there's more options for dogs?
Well, maybe we should put our heads together and do that.
Yeah.
We need a little outdoor space for them off the leash.
Exactly.
Yeah, girl. But no, thank you so much for inviting me on today's show. I mean, like, did we touch on our fit frugal? I mean, what's up? Like, what?
This is a free flowing.
No, the whole frugal thing is funny. Like, I think it has such a bad connotation, and maybe not. And I say that in terms of it's the opposite of frivolous, right? Is it frivolous? Is that the other?
Yeah.
You're either frugal or frivolous. And to me, there's nothing wrong about being frugal. I think growing up in a big household like we did, and we're, immigrants and
we were penny pinching, man. I mean, it's crazy how you can feed a whole family for $20.
Yeah.
But not nowadays. We go out and we splurge on one meal that was probably could have covered the whole month. And so I think the whole thing about society, what's so corrupted about it is we go out to dinner. We go buy that nice purse because it makes us feel good. We go out and buy this nice car. But then you complain about inflation, or you complain that you can't afford to buy a house or build the wealth. It's like, no, it's the choices that you made.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, like, so to me, be frugal.
Yeah. And I think that's another thing that I'm grateful about, because, you know, people complain about their mortgage and all these things. And I'm like, but to put that into perspective, be grateful that you can even afford a mortgage, to qualify for a mortgage, because there are plenty of people out there that can't even qualify to get into a home that they've been told to all of their life. It's like, this is the American dream. I mean, we dream a little differently, I assume, because I feel like our vision to make an impact on this world is a little bit more than just owning one home as real estate investors.
Right.
And I feel like it's much bigger than us, like that calling that you said that was kind of pulling and tugging on all of, right? Like how we just feel when we wake up. That's why I wake up now. It's because we've kind of grown outside of ourselves and looking at the bigger picture and realizing, like, wow, this is so much bigger than us, and there needs to be more of us. And I feel like that's the collective shift that is happening here in Vegas. All of the transplants that come here, why do you come here? It's because you're called to come here, and people kind of take their time to figure it out. But at the end of the day, like, there is something that pulled you here.
Absolutely. This was not by coincidence. You and I sitting down here right now is not by accident. I know it was part of the bigger plan, and whatever that, you know, transpires to, or really down the road. I mean, I'm excited to see, and I'm glad we met, you know, had the opportunity to connect. I definitely see there's a lot more synergy and collab with our dogs, with just a conscious, holistic healing realm. And then even when it comes to real estate investment here or outside of Nevada.
Yeah.
So
wealth, health, and wellness.
Bing, bing, bing.
Bing, bing, bing. Yeah, I just want to acknowledge you for being here, like fully connect and being present. And it's always really nice to like honor another woman's like energy, you know?
Thank you, doll.
So
yeah, no. Appreciate you sharing your space, energy with me, and giving me the opportunity to share our stories together and let each other know, like, hey, me too.
Yeah, me too. Dinkwads, part 2 coming up. All right, guys. I hope you enjoyed today's. My name is Tawni. You can find me on IG at Tawni Soares. Again, this is Fit and Frugal.